Welcome back to this week's episode of Why Iowa. And to honor Black History Month, we're going to tell the story of a landmark case that came out of Iowa, Clark versus Muscatine.
Here in the heartland, this is the working man. These are the fields of dreams of American. No, you can't take that away, 'cause I want to stay here in the heartland. I'm here in the heartland.
Alexander Clark was 16 years old when he arrived in Muscatine, Iowa. It had only been 4 years since the Iowa Territory had become a free state, but equality for African Americans was still a distant reality. Alexander worked as a barber and became an entrepreneur, establishing real estate and selling firewood to the steamboats that would go up and down the Mississippi River coming out of Muscatine. He was a founding member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Muscatine, the Iowa agent for the Frederick Douglass newspaper, the North Star. During the Civil War, he would help recruit the 60th Iowa Colored Troops, and he sought to improve civil rights for African Americans in Iowa. In 1867, Muscatine had separate schools for blacks and whites. That year, Alexander would send his 12-year-old daughter, Susan, to a public school that white students attended. She was refused admission due to her race, but the African American school was a mile further, and the quality of education wasn't the same. So in 1868, Alexander Clark would sue the Muscatine School Board for the right for his daughter to attend her local school due to the school violating the Iowa law and Constitution. The 1857 Iowa Constitution stated that the Board of Education is required to provide for the education of all the youths of the state through a system of common schools. The court would side with Clark, but the Muscatine School Board would appeal, and eventually the case would go to the Iowa Supreme Court. The Iowa Supreme Court would upheld the district court's ruling that Iowa schools cannot segregate based on race. 3 years after the Civil War, and 86 years before Brown v. Board, the state of Iowa would lead the nation in arguing that separate was not equal, and our Iowa schools were desegregated. Susan Clark would graduate with honors from Muscatine High School in 1871, becoming the first African American to graduate from a desegregated high school in Iowa. Her integrity and character was so well respected that she was even chosen as one of the speakers at her commencement. The middle school in Muscatine, Iowa was officially renamed the Susan Clark Junior High in 2020, connecting history with education forever. As a reminder to all of our Iowa visitors, thanks to our partner Musco Lighting, all Iowa students receive free admission to the Iowa Hall of Pride.
Well, Drake is special for me, not just because I come back and, I run every year. It's special to me because this is actually where my track running started in elementary school. I remember in elementary school running in the middle of that stadium on grass, and it was the most exhilarating moment I had at my life in that time, and I just wanted more of it. So I just credit Drake Relays to reaching out to the kids and, giving them a future for track and field. Every year I tell my friends and family, I said, I have more pressure to come back and win at Drake than if I were to line up in any Golden League, 80,000 plus screaming fans in Paris or, Italy. I have more pressure to win at home. And, it's just because I know everybody in the stands and, I was raised here.
Got to Waverly Shell Rock in 06, was varsity assistant from then till 2013. Then from 2013 till now, I've been head junior high and varsity assistant. 3 years ago, I think there was about 70 girls. 2 years ago, it only jumped about maybe 10, 15 girls up to 85, 90. And then it went from 85, 90 to what it is right now, which is about 160. And of those 160 girls that are on track wrestling as registered wrestlers, 112 are currently signed up for our state tournament, which is Saturday. Well, Coach Whitcomb, who's Waverly Shell Rock's head coach, called the state and said, we want to be leaders in this. And Iowa's supposed to be a leader in wrestling in the United States. We're kind of falling behind in this girls stuff. We want to be the leaders in this. And after he did that, state sent out a survey, said who wants to host girls divisions. Several schools called back or gave information back and volunteered, and that's kind of how it all started. Well, I have 3 daughters that wrestle now.
And how did they say, Dad, I want to wrestle? Or did you say, hey, what'd you think? How did they get to the point where they wanted to compete on the mat?
Well, it's kind of interesting because Coach Whitcomb sent out that survey, and JC, my oldest, came home and said, Dad, I'm going to wrestle. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And then Avery, my middle one, who's 15, said, you know, I think I want to practice, not sure if I want to compete. Once it all started getting going, Avery said, I'm 100% in, let's do this. Really, my youngest was trying to figure out if she wanted to do it or not, and that's why she just did a couple days a week of practicing, and then now she's all the way in it as well.
Just my involvement here with wrestling in the state of Iowa, whether it's IHSAA Wrestling, AAU Wrestling, having that involvement, I've seen the progression of women's wrestling, and so I've had a lot of discussions with people about when's going to be the right time for Waverly Shock really to get involved in women's wrestling. And through those conversations, said, hey, let's be a leader in this, and let's start it right now. Typically, we've had some girls at WSR over the past, but it's been sparse.
Yeah.
We've had one, here and there. So it wasn't a normal thing here by any means. And for us to be able to start out here the first year of really incorporating the program and having 11 girls, and I think the community's really embraced it. At first, I think there's a lot of apprehension of, I don't know, it's still a new thing here in the state. It's still growing across the country. But as they've seen things going, our first event here at home, the place was packed, it was loud, it was excited, and so I think the community has really embraced it, and I think the state of Iowa really starting to see, the interest is there and starting to really embrace it as well.
My dad is the assistant coach, and he's the middle school coach at Waverly, and so he's just been a big part of my life. And I always wrestled at home and wrestled with my sisters. I've always watched boys practice when I was little, so I decided to give it a shot. But it's been difficult. I was hesitant because I'm in basketball also, so I was hesitant, should I compete? But I don't regret it at all.
Fall came around, he sent an email, said yes, this is actually happening, and since I have so many connections with wrestling, since I'm a manager, my dad's a coach, I've just been around it my whole life. I thought this is my chance to actually do it.
Are you still doing basketball and wrestling?
Yep.
And how's the dynamics of that? As your basketball coach, what do you? That's great.
It was obviously a big deal because girls wrestling, and so we had a meeting about it, and we're is this possible? Am I going to be able to compete in both? And for the most part, it's been really good. I've had to just come in early morning lifts to come to wrestling practice, but it's totally worth it.
After we had started and after the other students had watched our duel with Charles City, some of them were like, I want to join next year, can I join now? And they could have joined in the middle of the season, we would have welcomed them, but I've heard a lot of people say they want to join next year.
I was super nervous, just having a tournament, and then we found out it was state. I was oh, this is going to be bigger than I thought, and there's going to be a whole bunch of our fans there. So that's a little nerve-wracking, but I'm just going to go out there and have fun.
I think we'd like to see it move in the same direction that you would say the boys are in right now. Having a set state tournament, having a schedule available, and that may be different in a few different ways. That's yet to be decided, and we'll see as the growth and numbers keep trickling in here. But I think in 5 years, that's definitely where people would like to see it go.
I'd love for it to be sanctioned. I think the boys' union, the girls' union are trying to figure out which direction they want to go. Whatever it is, I think it's coming soon.
Recently, the Hall of Pride has been focusing on our Iowa student athletes. And remember to check out on our YouTube channel our Cooper DeJean interview and Taman Lipsy interview. And we'll actually be traveling to Fort Dodge tomorrow with Wrestling on the Horizon to interview Drake Ayala, the Iowa recruit from Fort Dodge. So be sure and check in next week to see his full interview.